So Jack Way is there too. Did I?
Well, Colleen, looks like we have 64 participants. What is your sense on the percentage of senators that we currently have?
I think we're good.
Okay.
There's some people still kind of making their way in, but I think it's okay to go ahead and do roll call if you're ready.
Okay. Well, welcome to everyone to the first Senate meeting of the new academic year. There's a lot to cover today, and we're looking forward to hearing in a few minutes, not only from the provost, but also from the vice provost, and then, of course, also talking about some important curricular changes and some other important business of the Faculty Senate. So welcome to everyone, and especially welcome to our new senators this year, to your first official meeting of the year. So with that, I will turn things over to our executive secretary, Colleen, for your roll call.
Okay. Barber?
Here.
Barrett? Barrett?
Here.
Okay.
Sorry.
Boomineer?
Here.
Branyon?
Here.
Brandenburg?
Here.
Carmack?
Here.
Chambliss?
Here.
Chong?
Here.
Corley, I just admitted you, so I know that you're here. Deweese?
Here.
Edelman?
Here.
Elman?
Here.
Urban?
Here.
Evans?
Here.
Fuentes?
Here.
Gillis for Galt?
Here.
Gordon?
Here.
Graffius?
Here.
Green?
Here.
Hadley?
Here.
Hester?
Here.
Ivory?
Here.
Harapasmino?
Here.
Kellison?
Here.
Khan?
Here.
Kimbrell? Niece?
Here.
Sungwoo Lee?
Here.
Trung Lee?
Here.
McKinnon?
Here.
Mason?
Here.
Mitchell?
Here.
McClinney?
Here.
McLean?
Here.
Nickel?
Here.
Nori?
Here.
Olivieri?
Here.
Pisani?
Here.
Pinko? Richter?
Here.
Santiago? Brown for Santiago?
Santiago is not here anymore.
Okay,
Yeah,
we'll talk.
I am here for Dr. Santiago. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. Scullin?
Here.
Self?
Here.
Scott Meyer?
Here.
Shoemake?
Here.
Snipes?
Here.
Swift?
Here.
Sykes?
Here.
Talbot?
Here.
Tawidi?
Here.
Wee?
Here.
Williams?
Here.
Wofford? Wofford? Yoder? Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Colleen. We have 3 administrator reports today, I believe. So we'll give the 3 members of the upper level admin a chance to speak, and then if they're willing, we'll open it up to questions following that. So we'll start with our president, Dr. Kelly, if you'd like to address us.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. I would, and I'll join Dr. Williams in welcome to a new academic year. This is, a slightly complicated one, certainly one that has a lot of palpable positive energy among students around campus, and that is thrilling. I'll give you a few things at a high level before I hand it off to Dr. Preston. First, just an update on the humanities renovation schedule. I know that's on a lot of people's mind because that's an inconvenient project. We have a lot of moving parts around campus as a result of it. As you've seen, the near finalized design schematic that has come out, it is really a amazing project. It is going to be a beautiful, beautiful, highly functional building when it's completed. The timeline for that completion is going to span this academic year and the next one before we are able to get a certificate of occupancy. But during that time, I think you'll see a transformation on that building that's going to create some of the finest learning space that we have on campus. If you haven't had a chance to visit UWG Noonan as of late, two projects were celebrated last week, and they are both by student artists. They're absolutely exceptional. One, a sculpture that is out in a brand new pad out in front of the UWG Noonan campus building. And then, of course, the mural, which I think you've seen celebrated in different ways, that was done inside of that building. We had a chance to celebrate those student artists last week. And if you haven't had a chance to experience those pieces, they are really something special. I would also note that as the students talk about their experience creating those pieces, one of the most powerful things in their narrative was how they talked about their mentors and how their mentors taught them things that they didn't know and filled their toolbox in a really unique way. Great credit go to those faculty members. Additionally, tomorrow is our first football game in 666 days. For those of you who haven't had a chance to come out, I would certainly encourage you to do that, because you're not only going out to support, more than 120 student athletes who'll be playing tomorrow, but we also have our marching band coming out for their first performance in University Stadium in 666 days. And we got a chance to hear a little bit of their rehearsal last night. It's just exceptional, the positive energy that came out of the marching band, and to Kale Self, to your credit in leading that group. It was really just a wonderful bastion of optimism, and they are thrilled to be able to play. And tomorrow will also include our cheerleading team. Cheerleaders, as you know, won 2 national championships last year, but a special development occurred over the last few weeks. We were contacted by the International Cheerleading Association, along with USA Cheer, because our all-girls squad was made the USA national team, representing the United States at the World Championship. That's being done in a remote fashion, and you will see the performances and competition on the Olympic Channel in October. Couldn't be more proud of that squad as well. And you have a chance to see them, enjoy tailgating, enjoy the sense of community that comes along with tomorrow's event. 2 other things that I'll update you on. One, I know that President of the United States signed some new executive orders yesterday related to vaccine mandates across large employers. As of right now, I do not have any information from the state or from the USG as to how that will impact us and if that changes our situation at all. However, the minute I learn about any of those impacts, we'll be communicating that widely across campus as soon as we possibly can. And finally, I'll give you a little update on enrollment. That's a subject we've talked about frequently as we've been in Faculty Senate. As I've said publicly many times over the last few weeks, enrollment is down, not just here, but in America. Continuing students nationally are down by 2%. That rarely ever, I don't know that that's occurred in 5 decades. To have continuing students collectively down across the entire United States. We have, for the University of West Georgia, that's going to be probably, we're not at our census date. We still have weeks to go before we get an official count, but I suspect we'll be in the down 4% range, up in graduate, down in undergraduate. I can tell you that across the university system of Georgia, that is the case for most institutions. We have less of a decline than many of our sister institutions, some of which I think you'll see in double digits in some dramatic declines. There is a lot of work being done on that front, both at the system level and institutionally, and I'll tell you a little about that. At the system level, there's an assessment across the board of what have the impacts been of not requiring SATs and ACTs. Obviously, the Board of Regents has decided to put that requirement back in place, but the disruption that occurred because of the pandemic over the last 18 months to enrollments is not going to go away. There have been some other dramatic shifts happening in the marketplace at the same time, and that includes some private sector companies entering the higher education space with some incredibly affordable credentials that result in well-paying career opportunities. And that's going to be a challenge that we're going to have to be facing and navigating through for a long time. We also have a lot of students who are viewing college as a risk. We want to lessen that as much as possible. We also want to differentiate ourselves as an institution from those that perhaps are more of a risk. We've done a lot of work in that space over the last few months and over the last year. And some of those are directly in the enrollment and recruitment space, and some of them are really dedicated to continuing students and making certain that student success is built into our processes. For instance, we went and reinvented the drop process. University of West Georgia has historically had some very rigid drop levels, disrupted a lot of students' progress toward learning during the fall semester and the spring semester with some pretty large and dramatic drops. And those for a lot of students were just unexpected. They should have known, perhaps, but they didn't. And we weren't doing a lot to help them. So we've changed that process and are continuing to change that process so that we can do as much mitigation with students ahead of time, be very proactive in making students aware of not only what their situation is, but what options they have to put themselves into a better situation. Additionally, we're changing our recruitment process. A lot of the practices that we've been using are, to be frank, out of date. They look more like a model from the 1990s than the 21st century. So our team in enrollment and admissions is really looking at everything that we're doing as we are moving toward onboarding a new vice president for strategic enrollment management, looking at all of those processes to better meet the needs of students now, to get us out in the field earlier, to build awareness around the University of West Georgia in ways that we were not. Additionally, we are in the midst of putting a new marketing into the field. A lot of that is digital because that's where that work is done now. That's how people are receiving information, and it's where persuasion lies. So we have some new collateral in the field in a digital marketing campaign that's really pushing toward a spring campaign at this point, as well as awareness building for the University of West Georgia, both of which were recognized as weaknesses on our front as a university. The overall enrollment numbers by the next faculty senate meeting, we'll have confirmation of that. I'll be able to share that with you at that point. But I wanted to give you that update. This is not the year that we have to worry about that the way we will in other years. I say that because while every institution is experiencing enrollment declines, and not every institution, but the vast majority, we have CARES money and federal dollars that are coming in during this fiscal year to support universities because of these impacts being so widely felt. That won't be there next year. It won't be there 2 years from now. And those are the types of things that we're going to have to plan for in terms of making certain that we have an institution that's meeting the needs and expectations of the students who are not yet part of this university. With that, I will end my remarks. I'll hand it over to Dr. Preston and then take questions afterwards. Thank you, Dr. Williams.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kelly. Really appreciate that. Dr. Preston, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Glad to be with you all. And I'll echo President and also the comments that I made at the kickoff faculty meeting, general faculty meeting we had last month, that we've got a great start to the fall 2021 semester. And I want to thank each of you all for that. Again, I hope that your summer was a productive one, but also a time where you could recharge. And in particular, as we woke up to weather in the 50s this morning, hopefully we've got football tomorrow and the crisp air of fall. Always love this time, and I hope that you're enjoying it as well. I want to thank you all for your dedication for your work on Faculty Senate and all of the committees. Looking at the agenda today, I'm impressed that right out of the gate, first meeting of the semester, the Faculty Senate, it's very clear that you all have been productive and active in the various committees, and I want to commend you for that. Particularly impressed with the depth of thought that you all are putting into not only the academic elements, but also shared governance and faculty development and all of the important aspects of the work that you all do. Academic Affairs and the entire university has been running full steam throughout the summer as well. And so I'd like to share some updates with you on some of the things that we've been working on since we last came together as a Faculty Senate. As you met, Dr. Akins and Dr. Ela joined us in July. Many of you all have met one-on-one with them, and I'm glad to see that they are actively engaged in promoting academic success as well as promoting innovation and research. And we're glad that they are here and look forward to seeing all of the collaborative work and the great things that they're going to be achieving within academic affairs alongside you all. Also want to highlight in July, mid-July, we had a joint academic affairs and student affairs and enrollment management leadership retreat, where we took about 35 people and really focused for 2.5 days on improving how we collaboratively support student success. This was the first time that I'm aware of in UWG's history where we had so many thought leaders coming together to work on how we can support students. And we focused on, as President Kelly was just talking about, various elements of disruption in higher education, the competitiveness and the relevance, and really cross-divisional campaigns for recruitment and how we can best serve students and advance the university. We also talked about SAC-COC, QEP, post-graduation outcomes, and other strategic improvements that we'll be working on across the academic year, making sure that we had broad understanding of the importance of these, as well as having the different divisions across UWG and SAEM and academic affairs as part of those initial conversations. And I know that Dr. Akins is going to be diving deeper into the SAC-COC and the QEP, working with Faculty Senate and across the university. And we'll provide some updates here in a moment to you. Also, over the summer, we continued working with the deans across academic affairs, focusing on the comprehensive analysis of programs. We created some baseline data and shared that with each of the colleges and schools in April earlier this year. And now in the fall semester, the focus is going to be on taking those on a per program basis and looking at what's going well and how do we enhance that. And in areas where we need to change or improve, or we see some bottlenecks in our curricula or in our course offerings, how can we make changes to that to make sure that students are most successful? So starting with those strategic priorities of UWG, and then focusing on those scorecard elements that we've all seen, mapping those to blueprints, which are the action statements within each college and school, and then doing 90-day really focused sprints on achievable outcomes to help improve the entire university. This is an activity as we've mentioned, that is across the university and within academic affairs. The core of that work is among the faculty in the different programs, talking about the successes that we have. And one of the early successes of that from the post-graduation outcomes working group was co-curricular maps, and how do we create a rich, not only mapping of which courses are recommended on a per semester basis, but also what are some of the activities that students should be doing to advance their academic understanding within their disciplines outside of the classroom. So attending talks, connecting with internships, and so forth, all of the great work that the faculty are doing and student affairs, enrollment management, and other divisions are doing across UWG. How can we make sure that students are aware of these and really plan that as part of their 4-year plan? So comprehensive analysis programs is going to be a very big activity across this academic year, looking at and having some great robust conversations within the academic programs this fall, and then taking action on some of those recommendations in the spring semester. But all of this is focused on, as Dr. Kelly mentioned, raising the profile of and enhancing opportunities for student success at UWG. In addition to the program analysis, we're constantly looking at improving how we're recruiting. And academic affairs has a significant role in enrollment management. A great example of that is how we're reimagining Preview Day 2 weeks from tomorrow, working with the Office of Admissions, and we'll still have that browsing fair where potential students and those that are with them can explore not only student affairs elements and campus life and activities, but also our academic programs and tabling that. Additionally, we're adding a breakout session for Q&A on a per program basis. And really the goal of this is to create a more active, engaging atmosphere where the academic programs are spotlighted even more and focusing on the great experiences that we offer in our academic programs, allowing potential students to really talk with faculty and talk with program coordinators and leadership on a per program basis to really dive deep into connecting with those academic programs. So this is a change in the programming for Preview Day, but as I expressed to the deans, and I'm hopeful that they're sharing throughout the colleges and schools, I believe that this is going to be one of the most impactful ways that we can improve admissions and enrollment management to forge those stronger connections with potential students and the academic disciplines that they're most interested in early in making that connection. But we're not content just to start when they come on campus and are considering West Georgia as a potential university to study. We'd like to make sure that we have an active presence in the minds and the hearts of potential students as early as possible, middle school and high school. And one of the most effective ways of doing that, as I mentioned to Faculty Senate earlier this year, is to focus on summer camps, to invite people to campus and have them experience not only the great facilities that we have, but also the experts in our faculty and also in our undergraduate and graduate students. So we've advanced across the summer, looking at that portfolio of a number of offerings that we will be providing in June and July of 2022 next summer. 1 week long camps and a whole menu of options that really highlights a lot of our different academic disciplines and let students in middle school and high school explore whether anthropology or performing arts or creative arts or computing or whatever the discipline is, really helping them explore that and maybe find their academic home years later. So I'm happy to say that work on summer camps for next summer 2022 is coming along nicely. We should have the ability to advertise those quickly across the next month or two and really help students start planning for that. I appreciate the work of all the faculty who've contributed ideas for this and looking forward to developing these camps and having the faculty be front and center in delivering them. This is a longer term investment in enrollment management and just another contribution that academic affairs can be making to really drive that conversation and really highlight our programs and our faculty to interest students and have them coming here for years to come. We've also been focused on removing barriers that students experience either as they're starting to come to West Georgia or while they're here. This includes a simplified academic application process. So right now you log in, you click through a number of steps to apply for, but creating an easier process to do that, still maintaining that rigor of what we're looking for students to present and make sure that they're meeting the admission standards. But how can we make sure that that process is as easy for potential students as possible? This might include a QR code where they can point their phone's camera to it. And if they have an interest in a particular program, it jumps right there. So using technology to make it as easy as possible for students to find their home here at West Georgia. One of the other things that we've focused on in removing barriers to students is also adding advisors. We've added 3 new advising positions over the summer to help students have decrease that ratio of students to advisors and make sure that they've got that robust advising experience. In particular in the summer, making sure that they've got 365 and a quarter days of the year for advising and all of that support that the Center for Academic Success and Advising provides to students. We've also been focusing on placemaking. You've seen the improvements that we've made to the classrooms with new seating and tables for students and new podiums and AV support for the faculty. Had a great conversation with Dr. Williams earlier this week and focusing on that importance of faculty and making faculty central to how they're using that AV. So to clarify again, I know this has been a question that has come up in the past. I'd like to emphasize, not only in my conversations with many of you, but also here at Faculty Senate, that faculty are central to how that instruction is played out in the classroom and the use of whether it's a whiteboard or a projector or camera, improving that student learning experience and the faculty's expertise and the discipline. And it changes from course to course, but having that flexibility is very important. In addition to the classroom experience, you'll also see that we are upping our game, pun intended, in esports. And we have a multi-divisional working group that's focused on this. One of the first things that was impressed upon me when I joined and in the spring was the great work that many faculty in working with also the Registered Student Organization for Esports has done, not only in academic research on sports management and esports, but also in the recreational space, UREC space that was built up on the ground floor of the campus center. And there's a growing interest in this, not only to support student, but also academic space, whether it's sports management or interdisciplinary studies or various areas in RCOB. Also working outside of academic affairs with UREC and advancement and housing. We've got a learning community focused on esports, and there's just a growing interest in this. So we're investing in that as a university. Similar to summer camps, esports is a great way to raise the profile of our university and the minds of potential students, increasing public awareness and providing an opportunity for potential students in middle and high school to come on our campus through regional or even statewide competitions in esports. We've got a great Coliseum and other great facilities to host these kinds of things. But I'm also happy to say that we are a member of the Peach Belt Conference esports now. That was an achievement over the summer. And we'll be working to increase the profile of our students and have a competitive team across this next academic year. I want to thank you all again for your contributions, not only in Faculty Senate, but in shared governance across the university. There are a number of things that I know that Dr. Akins is going to dive into, but I'd like to highlight the QEP, the element of taking something that UWG is already excellent in and raising the bar on that will be the heart of our QEP process across the next year. And look forward to seeing all of the different, not only the solicitation of proposals to go out, but then also your ideas of what our next QEP should be. We've also got a SACS COC faculty representative, and that process is ongoing. So thank you all for not only your nominations, whether they were nominating others or nominating yourself, but also the work of the Faculty Senate Executive Committee in helping us find that rep for the faculty on that SAC COC process. We've got a director of the Office of Education Abroad that we are looking for. And so I'll leave it to Dr. Akins to dive into the details of that, but also want to highlight Gen Ed assessment and Momentum and the other student success initiatives that the USG, these statewide initiatives that you all are all contributing to, really enhancing our student success and doing great work. Last comment I'd like to make is I hope that Dr. Ela has been reaching out and you've been able to connect with him, but please feel free to send him an email, send a call, drop by the office. He's here to support you, as is the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs, and encourage you all to make use of those resources for you. With that, happy to turn it back over to Dr. Williams, and we'll have updates from our Vice Provost.
Thank you, Dr. Preston. Appreciate all that information. Dr. Akins, if you'd like to speak to us, welcome to the Senate for the first time, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's very exciting to have my first Senate meeting. Thank you so much for having me here. I would be delighted to use a couple of minutes to make several announcements. As Provost Preston just noted, we have an open position for Director of the Office of Education Abroad. This is an internal applicant on the job. The job ID number is 232509. The position will be supported through course release and a stipend, and those details will be discussed with faculty's chair and the respective dean. Please apply through the HR, and Ms. Timika Boykin in HR is available to support the application submission. Timika's phone extension is 92286. So let me know how I may be of help as well. And I'm so excited that all of our faculty can openly apply to this position through the HR. There is one more position that I would like to announce. It will be posted early next week. This is Executive Director for the Office of Institutional Effectiveness and Assessment. Mr. Dale Driver will be leading the search committee, and more details will follow, but please be on the lookout early next week when this position will post. To join Provost Preston, I would like to extend huge thank you to the Faculty Senate Executive Committee for providing nominations and information about colleagues who would serve as the faculty representative for the EUWG accreditation lead team. The information will be reviewed with Provost Preston, and any other questions will be addressed with the Senate Executive Committee. Decision will be made before the end of September. Thank you so much for this collaborative work and great nominations. I would like also to mention the Push to Graduation project, which is part of the 90-day sprints, as Provost Preston noted, to identify and support students who may have some challenges. We would like to review student information, to explore ways to incentivize students to register for those last several courses so they can graduate. Our goal is to identify and remove possible roadblocks. So stay tuned for more on that as time goes on. Last but not least, I have started a very exciting meeting with colleges and departments to learn more about our programs and to hear from both faculty and administrators about the topics they consider worth discussing. Please reach out to me or to Shauna Kinnard if you are interested to schedule such a meeting, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all. It's a very exciting time for me. Again, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Akins. Well, if the three of you are willing to answer a few questions from faculty, I'll open the floor for questions. The Faculty Senate Executive Committee decided last week in terms of managing the Q&A time that we would prioritize the questions that were sent to us in advance. So I'll follow that policy and either give faculty who pre-submitted questions the chance to ask the question themselves, or in the case of questions that came in anonymously, I'll just read those more or less as they're written. If the rest of you who are participating in the meeting, especially the senators, would like to follow up with a question, especially if it's on one of these topics or on a completely different topic, if you'd like to join the queue, feel free to use the raised hand feature to join the line. And you may also want to send me a quick direct message through Zoom just to kind of alert me as to what the topic of the question is, so I can make sure that it's fit into the appropriate space. And that way we can group questions together by topic when possible, and move through this with some semblance of order. And I really appreciate the willingness that our administrators have had all last year and continuing into this year to take questions from the faculty. I think a number of us have found that extremely helpful. So the first question comes from Faculty Senator Kathy Scott Meyer, who would like to talk a little bit about an issue of speech and campus climate. And I will turn the floor over to you, Kathy.
Hi, I'm in a very odd space, so please excuse the background noise. I'd like to ask a few questions about the street preacher or the preachers that are on campus outside of the UCC. Yesterday, I walked into my classroom of first-year students and they were incredibly upset. It took me quite a bit of time to kind of calm them all down. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what they experienced. They were describing comments that were directed specifically at them using incredibly derogatory terms such as the N-word, or and telling them that they were going to go to hell based on their skin color, their religious affiliation, manner, and so I personally then walked over to the UCC after our class was done and saw these individuals surrounded by a group of students and witnessed them using racist, homophobic, misogynistic speech, and they were hurling them directly at specific students. First of all, my first question is, do they have permission via our policy 1006? Even if this is true, this administration is repeatedly expressing concern for our students. And so I am wondering, and the student chapter of the NAACP has been very active in discussions about the disturbing language being used by these persons. So I'm wondering what we can do or what can be done to define this as hate speech and possibly going beyond the free speech category and have these speakers removed from our campus.
I think that's probably best addressed by me. One, yeah, it's troubling. Let me start with that. And I wish I could say that it was unique to the University of West Georgia, but I've been on 250 campuses across the country. And as I've traveled, we've experienced very similar instances. Let me tell you what we do. And so, you know, I met with the president of the NAACP this morning. She was my first meeting. We weren't meeting for that subject. We were meeting for other matters. But it is one where when we have instances of free speech that some find distasteful, it is a very challenging thing for us to talk students through. Many of us have experienced that throughout our life in different contexts. University campuses are one of those contexts where that won't stop happening because we have designated free speech zones. Anybody who comes on campus to utilize one of those zones has to follow every policy and procedure that we have. Anytime that occurs, we deploy people who are trained to be able to discern the difference or the lines when perhaps a free speech instance got crossed. So we have general counsel's office, police officers. In fact, one of our students said, you know, I'm upset by this. And, you know, you have a police officer there protecting them. I went, that police officer is not there protecting them. They're protecting you, because if anybody comes to our campus as a visitor, we want to make sure that that our students are guarded as much as possible. I wish there was a really easy way for us to resolve the tension that's created by that. Unfortunately, First Amendment rights and the case law that comes along with First Amendment, especially as it relates to a public university in Georgia, and then the supporting policies that come along with from the Board of Regents, give us our fences. And what we are trying to do is operate within those fences, because we don't have another choice. Legally, we don't have another choice. So we are kind of expending all of the resources that we can to make certain that students are safe. Unfortunately, we can't control what people say, even when it's incredibly offensive. If there is a line crossed, and there are some legal lines, then of course we are positioned to respond to that. I wish there was an easy answer to it. It's certainly a concern for me. I know we are going to be hosting some conversations with students to address that, because when you are the subject of offensive insults and words, free speech rights and free speech zones and all of those things aren't that important to you at that moment. So we're going to try to find ways, and I hope you will assist in that, try to find ways to support students as you navigate a complicated world. But from an administrative perspective, we are managing that particular situation as best we possibly can, given the limits that we are faced with.
Is there a way that the administration can make some sort of comment about this, suggesting that they are not condoning what is happening on campus, so that the students feel supported by the administration?
Yeah, I have done that with many students. If you're kind of thinking in the mass email type of thing, we are looking at we're kind of looking at what role we can play in that regard too. So yes, but again, my time in Georgia has some unique policies and rules around that, just the way other states do. Every state is different. We want to make sure we understand all of those fences very precisely before we do that. But yeah, I've talked to a lot of students about these particular speakers on campus, and no, there is no condoning of that type of behavior, for me at least.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dr. Kelly. Quick follow-up to this question, and then we'll perhaps move on to some other topics, if that's okay. This comment just came in from one of our faculty senate committee chairs, who said, how can the university community be alerted in advance when such individuals are scheduled to be on campus?
Great question. A question that we have asked. So we're working through that too. It's interesting. It's interesting that you asked that. There have been some protests in cities, and forgive me, social movements, that's part of my area of study. There's been protests in cities that have been incredibly objectionable and have turned violent as a result. And then we've had some city responses where the city itself, the community, just decided not to show up. So people were walking down an empty road, and then they stopped coming, because they weren't there to walk down an empty road. They were there, to get people's attention. So it's a great question, and we're working on that piece right now. Again, I'm just trying to get to absolute clarity before we too hastily take action and then find ourselves find that being a cost to us that we didn't expect.
Thank you. Here's a question that I received regarding the statement that you made about enrollment a few minutes ago. And the question is the 4% decrease in enrollment an overall decrease, that is graduate, undergraduate combined? I know you said graduate increased, undergraduate decreased. And if that's the case, if this is the combined figure, do you have the figure for the undergraduate enrollment decline?
Yes, I have floating figures right now. I say that because all of the USG institutions are monitored on a weekly basis for enrollment. And that's a benefit to us as a state, because we get a chance to really understand the movement of students between institutions and matriculation through and progress through institutions and on a comparative basis. So I don't have firm numbers right now. I'm using 4% as an approximation with, let's say, a 2% increase in grad and a double that decrease in undergrad. But again, I'm not quoting specific numbers right now because they are approximation. Our census date will come in October. The census date confirms all of those numbers, and that becomes our IPEDS enrollment for the university for this fiscal year. And that's what you'll see reported each time. So that is, I'll give you, kind of those approximations. Let's say 4 to 5 on the undergraduate, which I will note is less than many institutions, far less than many institutions. The undergraduate population is probably the one that's most confounding right now across the state and across the country. And that increase in grad is not quite what we've had during other periods over the last 5 years either. And that's we take that in 5-year segments because you get a chance to see real trends over 5 years.
Yeah, well, thanks. I appreciate that. This next question may be best directed to the provost, though, of course, any of you are welcome to answer it, more than welcome. And that is regarding the comprehensive program review that you spoke at length about, Dr. Preston. This question came in before your remarks, and so maybe your remarks actually address some of these things, but I think the faculty member who asked about this is hoping for some more specific information. And so the faculty member wrote, could we please get more information about the comprehensive program review that is supposed to be happening this academic year? Very little information has been provided to my program, and it is unclear what, if anything, anyone even needs to do, who is conducting the review, how it's being conducted, and what will be done with the information. And so I know you spoke a little bit about the timetable, but I think what the faculty member is asking is, we've known for a few months that the comprehensive program review was coming and it's currently happening. But what are the dates and what are the processes, the specific processes that faculty members need to keep in mind? Who is supposed to be doing what and when? And in the end, as you said, in the spring, there's going to be this analysis, evaluation, planning moving forward. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? Specifically, what will be done with the information that's collected?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And this is a nuanced and very complicated process, which I think is why maybe there's some questions around it. So I'm happy to provide some clarity. I'll answer one of the parts of the question first to say who is conducting it, and it is the faculty are conducting it. This is a faculty-driven process of looking at the health and vitality and the needs of all of our programs on a per program basis. So of course that can be aggregated in the total across a college or a school, but the actionable areas are really at a program level. So I'll give you an example, not commenting on any program at West Georgia, but from my past experience as faculty and chair and dean, to say academic programs evolve over time. We see the agenda here that the UPC is bringing forth, the GPC is bringing forth. And so programs evolve, individual courses evolve, syllabi evolve, and also the whole program itself changes over time. Some can be more static than others, depending upon the academic area, but this is an opportunity across the next academic year to look at and pause and reflect on what are the states of our academic programs right now. As an example, we might find that students are not completing a program. They're leaving after a particular course. So is it that course is the prereqs need to be addressed for that? Is the modality? Is there that the course is only offered once every 2 years? I'm speaking somewhat hyperbolically, but really the question is for the faculty to put eyes on. And I know you all do this periodically, but this is a time to do a deep reflection across the university, not just in academic affairs, and say, what's working well and what do we need to change? So one of the target deadlines will be to really be at a good place where throughout the fall, we have looked at the programs, and I'll follow up with the deans and make sure that this is being shared out to the faculty and the departments, but we have an extensive set of data that show for, I think it's 5 years, the enrollment and the student success rate on a per course basis. So we can look at this from an undergrad, lower division, upper division, grad, number of students, how many majors, how many graduates on a per program basis. And what we might find, there are certain courses, there are certain areas in individual programs that the faculty can look into and say, maybe this is going great, maybe we need to do different things. One thing that might come up is the prerequisite chain. Oftentimes, as programs evolve, understandably, there's a great wealth of content in a particular area and you want to add courses, maybe it's required, maybe it's a prereq. And I remember a program that I was responsible for going from a 4 or 5 course prereq chain to a 7 course prereq chain over time. And I was intimately involved in it, and yet it took a time like this to pause and see that need, where if we've got 7 courses that students have to take in a row, that might be perfectly great and fine. It could be that by removing and shortening that prereq chain length, that more students are going to be able to graduate within that 4 or 6 year time span. It could be that a particular course is only offered at 8 in the morning or at 9 p.m. at night. Again, I'm speaking in extremes here, but looking at when courses are offered, and maybe the market has shifted. Maybe more students want to take this course in the afternoon or in a hybrid format when they're coming on campus once a week, and or maybe fully online. So there are all of these questions, and I'm putting together and working with the deans kind of some prompt questions that the faculty can use to seed these conversations. But again, back to the question that you raised, who is doing this? This is faculty driven. The faculty very clearly are responsible for our courses and the curricula, and they should be driving these discussions and then making recommendations to program coordinators, chairs, deans, and ultimately the office of the provost through UPC and GPC. So we might see a flurry of activity in the spring, getting ready for program and course changes for the upcoming year's catalog. There could also be programs that are doing fantastic and need more resources, and that can be also an outcome of this. I had a great conversation 2 months ago, and one of the academic programs said we could double the size of this cohort if we had additional resources placed into it. And it was in an area that there's a incredible market demand. So that could be an outcome as well. I know that that's a pretty broad answer, but I hope that helps contextualize the intent. And the reason my answer is perhaps a bit broad is that there's no one size fits all here. We have academic programs where the appropriate course size might be 12 or 15 students in a section, maybe even less. In performing arts, having that great mentorship by individual faculty. We might have other sections where 60 students in a section is appropriate. And so again, it's apples and oranges, and every discipline is different. This is merely to spur conversation and for us to look at continuous improvement, not generically across all of academic affairs, but very specifically on a per program basis. And this is also being conducted outside of academic affairs, looking at admissions and preview day. The changes that we're making there is exactly this continuous improvement. How do we do preview day better? And so the entire university is doing self-reflection and finding ways that we can serve more students.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Dr. Williams?
Yeah, go ahead.
Could I add one other dimension in there as well? The previous question was about enrollment, and I think one of the things that we all have to remember is oftentimes when we go through an exercise like this, our mindset is what are we protecting, right? Instead of what are we providing? Because we've got a very competitive atmosphere at a lot of universities who are working on themselves in what is increasingly going to become a hyper-competitive market. And I very strongly believe there will be contraction in higher education as a result of that, because you can't do a 50-year growth period and then have less demand and somehow maintain the same capacity. So one of the things that I hope drives comprehensive program analysis is really looking at not just kind of what do we have and how are we doing it, but what is possible, and what is possible for us to muster and give to the world. I think there's a tremendous amount of intellectual capacity that exists at this university. It can be exerted in a wide variety of different ways. This exercise is very much about us finding, ways to optimize what we have and what we can be. So I just want to throw that piece in so that we are thinking about the possibilities.
And Dr. Williams, if I might, something the president just said, I should have also added one of the driving questions of this exercise is also, what is distinctive about our academic programs? What can you get at West Georgia that you can't get down the street, north, south, east, or west? So part of this is also for us to, if we're doing great things that we need to highlight more and put a spotlight on, then this is an opportunity to do that. If we have academic programs where we're not making as compelling a case for distinctiveness and competitiveness, then here's an opportunity for us to up our game in that space and say, you've got to come to West Georgia and study X because we do it better than anyone, and here's why you should come here for it.
Yeah, Dr. Preston, if we could too, you're also reflecting what the Board of Regents has been hammering us with over the last few months. The notion of kind of homogenization. Well, this university is doing this and it's been successful, so we should too. The board's becoming a little less, I won't say a little less, a lot less tolerant of that type of homogenization across the state. You saw that with their change in procedure last year, getting an early green light for new programs. So we do have to be mindful of well, I'll go back to the fences. Those expectations from the board will ultimately determine what we're able to do. And we want to be mindful of that on the front end.
I appreciate all of those comments. One quick follow-up, Dr. Preston, if you don't mind. So it sounds like an exciting opportunity for a lot of productive conversations. Is there an expected format for generating a record of the recommendations and analysis? That is, are you expecting a written report to go to a dean or ultimately even to you? If so, is there a template or an expectation as to what would be included, or are you looking for something else?
Yeah, thanks. I'll own the ambiguity of this. So the short answer to your question is yes, there will be a template, and that goes back to the prompts questions that I'll be providing so that the deans can pass those on. And the reason I say I'll own the ambiguity is that my default was to really, given the differences among our academic programs, not want to put too much structure on that to inhibit creativity. But I think that's probably, we need some more definitive structure on that. And so that'll be coming within the next few days.
Very good. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of us will be very interested in getting that information. I received
one of the
follow-up.
outcomes, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
One of the outcomes of that will be, what are the recommendations that the faculty have for the program? I mean, you all are the domain experts and you know best the academic programs and what's possible, and also the currency in those areas. So a big outcome of this will be, what are the recommendations from the leaders in these academic spaces?
I received a quick follow-up message from a faculty senator asking about the outside consultant that is being hired for this and what their role in the process is going to be and when we'll receive information. So I think a few months ago, maybe at the end of the spring semester, either you or the president said, or it was conveyed from your office, that there would be an outside consultant who would provide comparative program data from other comparable institutions in the state and elsewhere. And I guess we haven't heard, and at least I haven't heard, and I guess this faculty center hadn't heard either, an update recently on that. Could you give us more information about the consultant's role in the process?
Sure. This person would be working in parallel. And so the reason that we haven't gone into detail about their role is that putting that work before the faculty's work, it would be inappropriate. So the external view is helping to offload some of the work on the analysis to focus on our peer and aspirants and look at, on a per program basis, what are the enrollment data? What are some of the innovations? What are some of the successes? What are the trends in other areas and other universities and institutions of our peer and aspirant set? And so that allows our faculty to focus on what's distinctive and what can we be doing as EWG, standing that alongside data. And I'll give you an example of this. We might have external data from our peer and aspirants saying they're moving in particular academic space and growing by, let's say, 15% across 3 years. If we are flat or down, then that allows us an opportunity to say what is different there, and perhaps provide the faculty, as they're examining how do we be distinct, a baseline for comparison, or I should say baselines for comparison in other places. But the intent of this external providing services is to come alongside this review and allow faculty to focus on the creativity of what we can be as West Georgia.
I guess I have, I received one other question that I think is in this general category of the comprehensive program review, and that is having to do with the performance measures or metrics that the university has adopted to measure the degree to which we're meeting our strategic goals. The faculty member asked, have those performance metrics been announced? If so, where may we find them? I think the answer to that first question is yes, they've been shared in provost council meetings, I believe. But that, if I understand what the person is asking about, but that last part of the question, where may we find them, might be of interest to a number of people. Is there a place on a website where faculty can see the scorecard, the academic scorecard, the metrics that are being used to measure?
I'll answer that question. The first answer is I believe so. The second one is I haven't gone to it myself. If not, we will have that up for you in WorkWest, which is where it should be today, and we'll send it out to everyone because we have shared that broadly. And know that the common link in all of those is really the economy of the University of West Georgia, because we have to make sure we're nurturing that. So demand is going to be the key driver. And I say that because the economy of the University of West Georgia is built on demand. If we don't have demand, we don't have a University of West Georgia. So we'll get that. If it is not already there, we will get. If it is there, we'll get the direction to you. If it is not, we will have that done in short course.
Thank you. I'm sure a number of people would appreciate it. So thank you very much, President Kelly. I received quite a few questions on COVID. Some of these may not be that relevant because they may be beyond your capacity to answer. So for example, several questions came in regarding the new order from President Biden yesterday, the executive order. And of course, you mentioned that you have no information as to how the USG is going to comply with that. So I will, in the interest of time, skip all those questions, but then go to a couple of questions that maybe you would be able to answer. And so here's a question that I'll just read that has to do with the guidelines we've been working with since the last week of July, I believe, from the USG about the recommendation for that mask wearing be encouraged. And the question is this: why are many UWG administrators not modeling the USG's guidance on mask wearing when appearing in indoor public gatherings or meetings on campus?
I don't inherently accept the conclusion that's embedded in that question. I believe that everybody is following the USG guidance, and that is our job. I think I can speak for myself. I can't speak for others. I carry mask with me, and in settings where that's appropriate, I've done a mask. When you're the president, you're often not within 6 feet of people because they don't like to be near you too often, which is which is an element of that. So it just depends on the context, but I do not accept that I don't accept the conclusion in there. Our job, our requirement is always to follow those Board of Regents policies to the letter, and understand that so much of our time right now is dedicated to understanding and implementing new policies by the Board of Regents. So we're navigating through a complicated space.
I know a number of faculty are puzzled by some of the recent changes that have taken place in regard to contact tracing and protocols for when a student has tested positive for COVID, what happens. And so one question is, and there was kind of a long prequel to this that I won't read, but the question is, who made the decision that UWG Health Services would no longer gather information about student attendance and classroom contacts from faculty, and why were not faculty informed of that change of procedure when it took place? And so the prequel to the question is that it used to be that faculty were contacted, the faculty member says, to gather information about that is essential to classroom contact tracing, including information about student attendance, close contacts among students in class. In other words, there was a conversation that would take place to see, okay, was a student in close proximity to somebody else? And now faculty are not being invited to that conversation, not being given that information. And the person who asked this question was concerned about that and asking how that decision was made.
And Dr. Preston may have some more nuanced insight. We do not control, and when I say we, I mean, I, as your president, do not control the procedures that we use for contact tracing. Those are derived and completely under the authority of the Department of Public Health, which our health services works directly with, and the policies of the Board of Regents, all of which you have been provided and are on the website all of the time. So they're at the end of July or beginning of July, I forget the specific date, there were changes in the Board of Regents policies and protocols. And I can't answer about changes in Department of Public Health's protocols. That somebody else would have to address that, and I can get an answer for you. I just don't have that readily available.
Dr. Williams, I'll follow on. I think there was also confusion around the letter that faculty were receiving. When a faculty person received a letter that said this 917 and this student needs an accommodation, there was some language in there that has now been updated effective yesterday. So I confirmed this morning with ITS that letter, which we had modified to correct, now should be correct for any announcement for any student accommodation need, effective yesterday. So the implication in that letter that said that faculty will be contacted by health services on how to communicate with their classes, that language has been removed in compliance with the new USG and Department of Public Health contact tracing processes that Dr. Kelly mentioned went into effect in July.
Thank you. Yeah, that was helpful. We have a question about graduate assistance funding and centralization of those. And I will give the senator who asked that question the chance to ask it herself, since she requested the opportunity to do so. So Kathy, the floor is yours.
I'm sorry, did you? Was that me that you just called? I'm sorry, Dan.
Yes,
Okay,
it was. If you're ready.
Thank you.
It's your question on graduate assistant funding.
Right. As the head of one of the graduate programs here at the university, I'm becoming increasingly concerned with the shuffling of, the ability to make decisions about our graduate programs, about our graduate money, and with the centralization of graduate funding in the graduate school. There's been, both a loss of control of our graduate positions that are central to the recruitment and retention of our graduate students, as well as yet another erosion of our shared governance. This decision was simply handed down to us without any consultation at all whatsoever. So I was hoping that you could explain to us how and why this was done and how it will be implemented equitably across campus if we continue in this manner.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. And I'll start by saying that the intent of this change was to create equity across UWG. I asked the budget office here in Academic Affairs to do an analysis of graduate assistantships and spending across the last few years. And one of the things that stood out was that we have in the past had unspent dollars that had been allocated with the intent for grad assistantships that had been through budget amendments used in other ways. And so best practice suggests that we have a common pool of funding to support grad assistants, and faculty are able to highlight the benefits to the student as well as to their programs and the institution and their research and creativity and scholarship that the assistants will support, submitting those applications and then the grad school allocating those out on an annual basis. So specifically, rather than relying upon this many GAs went to this department and we're just going to keep repeating that, it affords the opportunity as new needs arise across the university for those resources to be dedicated to areas where the GAs are most effective in supporting the programs and the faculty in those programs. So my charge to Dr. Ziegler early in spring was to look at what this process might look like and solicit input. And then also, once Dr. Ela arrived, to formulate a process that was published for faculty to apply for and receive assistantships equitably across UWG. I believe the allocation for FY22 was the same or nearly the same as it has been historically. And so the new process will go into effect after the graduate school and after Dr. Ziegler and Ela work with various graduate programs having input on that process. So there is not an official process yet. That's still being developed.
The difficulty that I have with this is that we are taking applications right now for spring and fall of next year, and we have nothing to use to recruit and or bring our students in. We can't, it makes it incredibly difficult for us to continue to do recruitment without having any knowledge about what it is that we're going to be able to offer our students.
Well,
Dina, the floor is yours if you want to follow up quickly with a question for the provost on this topic.
Sorry, I was muted. I know this came through GPC and the Graduate Advisory Council met this morning. The way the process is currently worded in terms of the proposal, there were concerns because it doesn't allow for multi-year awards. And as a student, if you're coming in, we're in the recruitment process for next year right now. If we can't award for multiple years, we're actually hurting ourselves because they will go to a competitive institution that will fund them if they have a 2-year program. And I think the other concern is to, like, with who is making these decisions, like, how are we going to know that? So I know right now, at least I can say for GPC, it came up and we discussed it. It's going back through Graduate Advisory Council and also the deans, because that's kind of hard with a looming deadline. If we were competing for a competitive process for some schools that rely on this, it may not be for a research project. It could be to support graduate teaching assistants and others as well, including it's another form to fill out. And if it's not filled out, we could be doing ourselves as an institution a disservice in terms of being able to further graduate student enrollment. So there's a few more kinks. I mean, I'm glad it's open in terms of sharing, but this needs to be vetted through several layers before it would come to, especially since it's going to be, if we're looking at credit hours to hold one, that's a catalog change. That does need to come through GPC and the Faculty Senate. Sorry, that's just where at least I could provide guidance right now or help.
Yeah, with regard to a multi-year, it's very difficult for the institution to make a multi-year financial commitment. We might have an argument to be made that there's, in the case that you talked about with a graduate teaching assistant, there's typically a standard number of credits that are being produced that those GTAs are supporting. And if there's consistency there, then it's reasonable to expect the same number of GTAs. So this was not a move to remove GTAs or GAs or completely turn over the apple cart, so to speak. The intent was to allow for faculty to make a compelling case that they have benefit to themselves and their scholarship and the student benefit, and make that case equitably across UWG. And again, the process is still under review. So my charge to Dr. Ziegler, and then when he joined to Dr. Ela, was to come up with a robust, equitable, and competitive process that supports all of our graduate programs. The centralizing of the funds just simply makes it easier to allocate those GAs.
Thank you. As you're probably aware, shifting topics once again, but I'm sure you're aware, there was a lot of faculty concern across the USG, I guess, about the BOR meeting yesterday, in which new guidelines on tenure were discussed. And I know that none of us can speak for the BOR, but there is a question here about UWG's response to this, and this is the question. One of the things that the BOR stated in its new guidelines for promotion and tenure and post-tenure review was, quote, if an institution is not carrying out an appropriately rigorous review process, the BOR may move the ability to award tenure to the board level until institutional processes have been remediated. So this is the question. How is an appropriately rigorous review process defined in your view? And is our current tenure review process sufficient? And is there a metric regarding how many faculty members are denied tenure? And finally, I know this faculty member put several questions in here, and this is the last of the set. Is this a step toward USG controlling all tenure decisions? I mean, to put this in context, of course, there are state boards that have done that, most infamously, I guess, earlier this year, UNC Chapel Hill, the state board stepped in with tenure decisions. And so I think all of those concerns inform the question, which is sort of where do our tenure guidelines stand, our tenure review process might stand in light of these new BOR requirements.
So, Dr. Williams, Dr. Preston is the best to address the intricacies here, which I will suggest today. It is too early for us to answer all of those questions. I will tell you that I have been in systems where the person in my position did not have the authority to do anything but recommend tenure to the board. And the board did control that. That is not uncommon. In fact, that is a model that, at least in the southeastern region, is quite common. So the operationalization of any new board standard or board policy always requires us to first go and do a review so that we can have an appropriate assessment. Because if the board chair calls me right now and asks me to provide him a summary of the rigors of our tenure process, my response is going to be, can you give me a little bit of time to go and put together the right summary? As he's not going to be, nor is any board member, nor should any board member be satisfied with anything but an educated analysis based on data. And we have some of those steps to do. Anytime the atmosphere changes, the context changes, the framework changes, we have to go and compare what the new expectations are, if there is any change, to what we are already doing to see what change is necessitated. So I would ask, and I would reserve the right for Dr. Preston to address this in a different way. I would ask, we need a little bit of time to be able to answer all of those questions the way we would answer board members on them.
Dr. Williams, for my part, I've talked with Dr. Akins, and based on this new executive summary and the new materials from the USG, we'd like to have a working group across academic affairs that addresses this proactively. The intent would be to ensure that we do have a appropriately rigorous process, and that begins with the peer reviews of faculty when during an annual or a PNT. So having existing processes for annual evaluation and pre-tenure, tenure, and post-tenure review. So I'm confident that we can meet and exceed this expectation that the board has created for us.
Well, thank you. I think that was helpful. If anyone would like to jump in with a question, you're welcome to do so. I do want to move on from the Q&A at 2:30, so we've got about 5 minutes left, but there may be time for maybe one question if someone has it. In the meantime, not seeing any hands immediately, let me just read off the last of the pre-submitted questions that I received, and that is, and this is kind of a general question that could be addressed to President Kelly or Provost Preston or both, which is, how would the UWG administration rate faculty morale? And do you think faculty morale on this campus needs to be improved?
I'll take that question. I've served at 4 different institutions, and I've never been in an environment where that wasn't always a question. It's interesting. Right now, unlike any previous period, because anytime questions of morale come up, there's usually some kind of structural issues that are to be addressed at that particular institution. But when we answer morale questions right now, I think you have to make them go far beyond the boundaries of a university, because we are living in a very complicated time. So I wouldn't answer the question of how would I rate it. I'm not sure what the scale would be. I will tell you that employee morale, the substance of an employee's experience at the university is important. And we have not been in an uncomplicated time for the last 18 months. And my hope is we're going to be in a less complicated time soon. And I would be grateful for everybody to advocate, everybody who you see, to go and get vaccinated on that front, as I continue to do. But it is always top of mind. The way employees feel gets transferred into the way students are served. But it's also in an organization where you have a lot of different workforce segments for a lot of different reasons. It's not something that we're going to stop working on, but do know from the seat of a person who has levers to pull, but not always other experiences to provide. It's a complicated time right now, and I appreciate everybody's resilience and patience and efforts to continue to forage through that complicated time to make certain that at the end of the day, the people we're in service to aren't losing right now. Because we do know there's been some learning losses and some underserving. And I don't just mean at UWG. I mean, there's not a K through 12 system in the country that accomplished all of their goals last year. And that is a really, really complicated place for us because we're going to be on the receiving end of that for the coming 12 years. And so the efforts that people are putting in at this university, in higher education, in K through 12, I'm grateful for that, given how complicated it is for us.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments and Dr. Preston's comments. So thank you for taking the time once again to speak to us and answer so many faculty questions. Well, at this point, I think we're probably ready to move on to the action items on which we'll be voting. So as all of you noticed, I hope from reading the agenda, we have a lot of new curricular items that we'll be voting on. I will turn things over to Dr. Karen Graffius, our chair of the UPC. Karen, I think the first agenda item that we have has to do with the math minor.
Yes, that's right. Thanks, Dan, and thanks for everybody for being at the meeting today and considering these proposals. The first proposal on the agenda is a modification to the mathematics minor. Currently, the mathematics minor has two options. One is mathematics and one is statistics. And the statistics option is out of compliance with the Board of Regents. It only requires 12 hours and the requirement is 15 hours. So this modification adds 3 more hours to the minor.
Very good. Well, that should be fairly self-explanatory. I think we're ready for a vote. So the question is, do you approve of the modifications to math minor? Looks like passes. Karen, back to you. Next item, I think, has to do with a new degree program, computing.
That's right. This is a new program. This is the Bachelor of Science in Computing. And this program was developed to give students a broader understanding of the ever-changing field of computing. And it was also being implemented to increase enrollment at the university. And I know that Louis Baumstark is here if anyone has any questions for him about this new degree.
Okay, yeah, this is a somewhat larger proposal than just modifying the number of credits for a minor to bring it into USG compliance. So I'll open it up quickly to see if anyone has any questions, anything they want to add, but I don't see any raised hands. So I think we're probably ready to proceed to a vote. Colleen, you can launch the poll.
Zoom is a little slow on the polls for some reason, so sorry about that.
Okay, well, it looks like it passes fairly overwhelmingly. Now that we've approved the degree program, there are a lot of other things, I guess, that are components of that or related to that. So next item is Nexus. Karen?
Yes, this is the Nexus Computing degree program. This will be a approximately 60-hour degree program. And again, it's an attempt to increase enrollment and also give some opportunities from adult learners who want to kind of retool their career. And again, any questions can be posed to Louis. He's here if anyone has any questions.
Well, seeing no raised hands, apparently this is not necessarily controversial, perhaps. So I guess we're ready for.
There is one,
another-
I do see
Okay,
one
go ahead.
hand, Dan.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that. Let me
Nope.
see.
No, never mind,
Um,
it's down.
Okay.
Glenn?
Yeah, sorry, coming in late with my raised hand. I'm sorry for being a new senator and being ignorant of this, but the Nexus degree, is that a professional degree program essentially?
Yeah, I can tell you what I know about the Nexus degree. It's something that the Board of Regents developed not too many years ago, if I understand correctly. And it is a different from an associate's degree, although it is about a 63 hour degree. And this is, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't know a lot about this, but this may be our first Nexus degree that we offer at UWG. Perhaps there's someone that knows more information than me about this particular degree.
We passed one with film, I think, last
Okay.
year.
That's right. Yes.
Dr. Preston.
I'm happy to provide a little bit of background on this. This is a degree that the USG has created, this Nexus idea. It requires the 42 hours of Gen Ed and then 18 hours above that in discipline, including an experiential portion. So this Nexus degree would be embedded within that bachelor's degree, and it would be a pathway for people to perhaps come in from a different discipline, get into computing, get a job in that space, and then continue on for the bachelor's if they so chose.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments on this? Seeing none. Nadia.
I have a question. How is computing and all of those these proposals, how are they different from the new BIS in data analysis? It seems like there's a lot of overlap there.
This is Lewis. To my knowledge, there's not actually much overlap at all. We do have a data analysis course in the new computing degree, but that's about it. The computing degree as a whole is actually very broad-based. It covers a lot of things from, there's a little bit of data analysis in it. There's some human computer interaction in it. There's a little bit of application development, a little bit of networking, a little bit of security, very broad. So it doesn't, it's not just the data analysis portion.
Thank you.
Anything else before we move to a vote? I think not. I know there's a little bit of, seems like there's a little bit of a delay in when the raised hands appear on my screen, so I wanted to give it just a couple seconds, but I think we're okay. And I think at this point, we can probably launch the poll. Do you approve the addition of the Computing Nexus degree? Looks like it passes. Okay, now that we have approved the degree programs, we need to approve the courses. And so I think we're going to take about 23 different courses as a block and just vote on all of them at once. Karen, maybe you can briefly.
Yeah, that's right.
summarize.
The rest of these are all new classes for either the Bachelor of Science or the Nexus. They're all for the Bachelor's of Science degree, and some of them are for the Nexus, but not all of them. So yes, we're going to take all of these as a block to vote on.
Okay, any questions about any of these courses? Seeing none, I think we're ready to launch the poll for voting on all 23 at once. Looks like it passed. Very good. And I think that covers everything for Undergraduate Programs Committee. Thank you, Karen. Appreciate your work early in the semester. The fall is always an extremely busy time for UPC, and I know it's only going to increase next month. So thank you. We'll now welcome Dina from Graduate Programs Committee, Chair of GPC. And I think the first item that you have for us has to do with the new MS in Integrative Health and Wellness.
Yes, thank you, Dan. One of the first item that the GPC talked about this year was the proposal for a Master of Science in Integrative Health and Wellness. The program is a 30 credit hour program, and there's an increasing market demand for health and wellness coaching. And the distinctive element of this program is this would actually provide that certification measure that is required by health and wellness coaches as well. I don't know if Duke Bibber or someone from the Department of Sport Management, Wellness, and Physical Education is on, if there are any questions.
Any questions about this new graduate program? Does anyone want to comment before we move to a vote? Seeing no raised hands, I think we'll launch the poll.
Colleen, I got an error.
Something's odd. Yeah, it says, it looks like it stopped with one person participating and it launched, yeah.
All right, let me see if I can launch it again. I don't know what's going on with Zoom right now, but let's see. All right, let's try this one. There we go.
Okay, yes, it's working.
All right, Zoom gods need to get with the program.
Hey.
All right, passes.
It's definitely complicated with all these polls. Thank you for your work. Yeah, so now I think we're taking, just like we do with UPC, we're taking a very large block of courses, maybe not quite so large as for computing, but still substantial, approving a number of new course additions. So Dina, back to you.
Yes, since we've approved the Masters in Integrative Health and Wellness, items B through J on the agenda are the courses that will comprise this new master's program. So we're taking those items as a block.
Okay, any questions about those CMWL courses? Seeing none, I think we're ready for the poll. And it looks like it passed. So very good. I think there's one more item that you have for us, which is a new sociology course, I believe.
Yes, this course, and I know Nima is on as well, it's from the Department of Anthropology, Psychology, and Sociology, specifically sociology. It's a request to add SOC 5015, Analyzing and Visualizing Data. There's an undergraduate course in this, but an increasing number of graduate students have been asking to take the course, and it would be open not only to sociology majors, but I think, and Nima can correct me on any questions, this is just a way to have a graduate option to take that course for graduate credit.
Very good. Seeing no questions, no raised hands regarding this course, I think we're probably ready to launch the poll. And it looks like it passed. Okay, I think you have a couple of information items for us regarding the professional counseling program.
Yes, there are two information items, and this is mainly a modification of the admissions criteria. Specifically, it is for the professional counseling for the master's in school counseling and clinical mental health counseling. It is eliminating the GRE requirement as it was not providing, like, in order to open up not only the applicant pool, but increasing, looking at the GPA and also adding an interview component with faculty. And it's the same for the professional counseling and the EDS degree. So those are catalog changes for the admissions requirements to these two programs.
Very good. Well, thank you, Dana. Appreciate that. Well, we have an action item now from the Academic Policies Committee, so I'll welcome Jennifer Edelman, Chair of the APC, to talk about proposed modification for the Georgia History and Georgia Constitution Proficiency Exam Policy.
Yes, thank you for inviting me today. We have one action item. We are previously the Georgia History and Georgia Constitution Proficiency exams had a limit of 2 attempts and then an alternative assignment where if they were unable to pass. Over the summer, working with, I believe, several faculty members and Jill and the director of the testing center, it was recommended that they remove the limit. So now we're moving to unlimited attempts with no waiting period in between. So you can see in the marked up text there that we are allowing unlimited opportunities with no specified wait time. I will say it looks like we only offer the test once a semester, so there is like a built-in wait time there, but if it was to be offered sooner, we would let them take the exam again.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, any discussion regarding this modification and number of attempts students are allowed on the exam? Seeing none, we are probably ready for the poll. Okay, it looks like it passed. There were 3 dissenting votes and 2 abstentions, but 42 votes in support. So I think the motion carries. And I think you have an information item regarding something that the APC is continuing to work on.
Yes, the information item we have is related to the high impact practices designations that we are looking to add to our courses in Banner so that we can report on which courses, how many courses contain these practices, which ones they are, how many opportunities students have to complete these practices. This is a reaffirmation of the role of Faculty Senate in the process. In creating these designations, the process will be that the HIPS committee will create the criteria by which we evaluate courses. It will go to APC for approval, so it will come through the Faculty Senate again. And then as courses are evaluated against the criteria, they will be going through UPC for the actual awarding of the designation of having a HIPS attribute. So that is just an information item.
Yes, I think it's an important information item because it tells us what we'll be doing, among other things, in the Faculty Senate over the next few months. Your committee, of course, as you said, is going to work on outlining some of the precise criteria over the next month or two, and then, of course, UPC is going to take it from there. So, although we're not voting on this today, there will be many votes in the future connected with items that relate very directly to the high impact practices. And this document that you helpfully provided, I think, gives us a sense of the structure for that. And I appreciate your work with David Newton and with the HIPS committee on campus. I think this is excellent. Any questions regarding this before we turn to something else entirely? Seeing none, thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate your work. And now we have another important information item from the Faculty Development Committee. It's chaired by Patrick Urban. So Patrick, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Dan. This has been brought to us at the beginning of the semester by Jill Drake and Dr. Akins, Dr. Jill Drake and Dr. Akins. It's an executive summary. That's all the official information we have received so far, but it connects to the conversation we had earlier with Provost Dr. Preston about the Board of Regents' ongoing changes to tenure, annual evaluations, post-tenure review, and faculty evaluations in general. So it's been specifically billed first as post-tenure and annual review changes, but clearly the way that the changes are made also to annual review, this will similarly probably affect pre-tenure and promotion and tenure applications as well. So we just wanted to, as a committee, bring that to the attention of everybody on the Faculty Senate, because there will be a good bit of work that we'll have to do later this year, or probably already this semester, as the board moves to approve these changes. Much of it will rely on institutions to craft actual policy changes, especially with regard to different review levels, and then also at the program level. I just want to highlight a few things here. If you look at the first set here, system framework, and then the second bullet point, BOR standards will require. And what's new here and has received a good bit of attention, also there was an AJC op-ed piece yesterday about the question of student success factors. Actually, more recently, I think this has been changed to student success activities. We haven't really received any official details how one defines those, but from what I've heard, the sense is that these would be like high impact practices, anything that professors, faculty do with faculty to help student success outside of their regular teaching activities. It could also be mentoring, undergraduate research, et cetera, et cetera. Other important changes here will be especially under post-tenure review. That'll probably first come down the pipeline for us to work on. That post-tenure review, and that's also reflected, I think, a little bit more easily discernible in the graphics, will be actually a very different process. And yeah, so if you look at that, the first graph shows how post-tenure review proceeded so far. So after you see tenure and promotion, you essentially have a 5-year period where your chair provides annual reviews, but the first peer review appears in year 5. And then there are measures for addressing any kind of unsatisfactory or satisfactory reviews. This process will look very different, I would say, not just visually, but there will be a much stronger role allotted to the chair here. And the way I read this and the way we discussed this in FDC already, seems that the chair's annual reviews will have a very important role in potentially already triggering a corrective post-tenure review after year 2. So that is very different from what has happened before, where really in year 5, peer review and the cumulative effect of the chair's review would impact this post-tenure review. Whereas now, an unsatisfactory review immediately triggers already in year 2, an annual remediation plan. Then if there's a second unsatisfactory review, a performance improvement plan. It's not quite clear to me whether that involves peers or not. And then potentially already in year 4, if remedial action doesn't change anything, potential dismissal proceedings. What I would really like everybody to take to their programs, or our committee recommends you take into your programs so this conversation can get started. how individually you might want to make recommendations to our committee and the Senate in general, what your programs need as we then work on implementing this on our campus. And I think what's important to consider, for example, is how do we perhaps create a rubric so that the chair's annual evaluation actually takes into account very discipline-specific requirements and professional development benchmarks in particular. Just to say from my own area in the humanities, you can't go after promotion and tenure in 2 years and already have turned around and published an article again, because oftentimes just the turnaround time between acceptance of an article and actual publication could be 2 years. So if we actually continue to use our regular promotion and tenure guidelines or PTR guidelines and apply them, somebody might be very quickly getting themselves an unsatisfactory mark, but simply because they're working on their agenda rather than having published something. So that's something I would like to be on the forefront of discussion here. How can we locally at our institution, once this is actually approved by the USG/Board of Regents, of course, how can we tailor this to our specific institutional profile as a regional comprehensive university, and also to take account of the importance that faculty governance and peer review have always played here, whereas in this new model, chair evaluations seem to be taking a much stronger role. So one more thing that I heard from several of my constituents here, this last bullet point under post-tenure review is notable that, sorry, this is actually above post-tenure review, that if an institution is not carrying out an appropriately rigorous review process, the Board of Regents may actually move the ability to award tenure to the board level until institutional processes have been remediated. So that's pretty strong language that seems to indicate that the board is trying to take a much stronger role in awarding, but also then reviewing tenure very regularly. So to me, and I'd like to hear also some voices from the floor, this does in a way change how we actually think of tenure, because I think broadly speaking in our culture, but our institutions, the idea has been that especially after promotion and tenure, the status of tenure allows us a good bit of academic freedom, develop our teaching and our professional or scholarly agenda. And here, I do think that this method of annual review by an administrator, i.e. the chair, to me seems to signal a pretty strong culture shift. So this is just something that I'm editorializing a little bit as the chair of the committee, but I'd like to hear also some other voices on this. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. This was excellent. And I know this is just the beginning of the work for the FTC. What you've outlined is what the board has dictated. And actually, it's only half of what the board has dictated because, of course, you had to submit the agenda last Friday. And as of yesterday, the board voted on a lot of other things that we'll be receiving. So this is one piece of the package, and there's another piece that is equally long or longer that has to do with the same philosophy, as you mentioned, applied to PNT and work toward achieving tenure. I think your summary was excellent. So the key takeaways are that when Tristan Dinley summarized some of this for the USG Faculty Council at the last Faculty Council meeting that I attended, there is an attempt, I think, by the board to ensure that faculty are maintaining productivity in every area throughout their careers, before, during, after tenure, and as some have noted, and perhaps increasing control of the process, increasing centralization. He didn't mention any of those things, but I think it's clear that is happening. So there are certain things that we cannot do. One obvious thing that we cannot do is ignore what the board has said. We have to be in compliance with this. But within that, as you mentioned, there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of room, I think, to create guidelines, to create rubrics, and that will be the work of the FDC in particular. As you also said, though, individual programs may play a role in that. I don't see any hands. What? Okay. Any discussion regarding this? I don't see anything, so I think we're ready. We're ready to move on, and no doubt later this fall, as the FTC has time to create guidelines for a vote, we'll have a chance to talk in more detail. I think we're now ready for the next agenda item, which is just a very quick information item from the Budget Committee. Lori?
Hey, everybody. So I am happy to report that David Nickel has agreed to be the chair-elect during 21-22 and the chair of the committee during 22-23. And while I have you, I will also just say super quickly, we're excited that on September 21st, we're having a budget workshop that will be presented by Provost Preston and Vice President Haven. We have a list of questions that we have submitted to them that we would like answered. All of the executive committee members are invited to be there. We will then share all of the slides from that on the next Faculty Senate meeting. We will record that workshop and have that available to everyone as well. Two other quick things. We have a subcommittee currently working on the 12-month pay option for 10-month employees that is allowed by policy, but has not been put into practice. And we are also collaborating with the our facilities colleagues on that committee to have a faculty parking fee subcommittee. So more to come from budget soon.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, this is important work that you're doing. Appreciate it, and definitely look forward to that information being passed on. Thank you, David, for agreeing to serve as chair of this important and busy committee. Well, I don't think we have any old business items that have carried over, and so we're ready to dive into new business today, having wrapped up all of the committee reports. And the first item is a discussion led by Vice Provost Rolitza Akins. So Dr. Akins, the floor is yours to discuss QEP.
You're muted. I think.
Dr. Akins.
Sorry, I was muted. More work would need to be done before we are ready to announce the process and timeline for QEP. So I'm in contact with the Senate committees to ensure that we design a process, and also have had some discussions with faculty who have led the process before. In addition, I am in discussion with our liaison about in Saxo COC about the best ways to approach it to be productive. It is very clear that we will have to base this on data, and it is very clear that there has to be a broad faculty participation. So at this time, I do not think there is any further specifically designed process that would satisfy the need for timelines for the Faculty Senate, but it is being worked on in collaboration with faculty committees and the Saxo COC liaison. So I hope this provides initial advice about how the process will be done, again, with broad faculty participation and with expected surveys and invited comments. Dr. Williams, is that satisfactory for now?
Well, if that's the information you have to report, thank you for that. Any questions about the QD? So essentially, I guess we'll look forward to more information in future months, I guess, when you have an idea of what the timelines are and what the processes will be. We'll be very interested in hearing that, I'm sure. Plus, I know you're working with the IPC
Correct.
the institutional planning committee that's going to take the lead in this. And, appreciate that.
And just as an FYI, the Institutional Planning Committee and I have not met yet, so I would not want to speak before we have had the discussion and we have charted this together. I think
Okay.
it's important that we're on the same page.
Right, that makes sense. Any questions for the Vice Provost on this? Don't see any raised hands, so thank you, Dr. Akins, appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Williams, and we will remain in touch and close collaboration. Thank you.
We now turn to the next agenda item, which comes from the Faculty Senate Executive Committee, and that has to do with resolution on the new advising procedure. Let me say something about the context for this. This resolution is designed specifically to address a decision from the Office of Academic Affairs regarding transfer of all undergraduate advising to the Advising Center. And the resolution specifically addresses the process for that decision, which did not involve the consultation with the Faculty Senate or with the, many of the program faculty that were affected. And I think it's important to note that this resolution is not in any way a criticism of the excellent work that the professional advisors are doing in the Advising Center. I think a number of people who supported this resolution, including myself, have a great deal of respect for the professional advisors, nor is it necessarily a statement that we would prefer one arrangement of advising over another. As the resolution states, that's the type of decision that needs to be made at the local level. Point 2 of the resolution says academic advising does not have to be conducted the same way for every program on campus. Individual programs should be able to select the advising model that best fits their students' needs. But what this resolution is an affirmation of the importance of advising, and our belief that this is an academic matter, and as an academic matter, it falls under the purview of the Faculty Senate, that the Faculty Senate would like to be involved in decisions on this topic that concern the entire campus, and faculty would like to be involved at the program level for decisions that affect their program. And so it's an encouragement for the administration to take into account faculty concerns, to involve faculty in consultation as we think about what the best arrangement might be for academic advising on our campus, something that is likely to look different from program to program and college to college. Let me open it up for discussion. I know there's a lot in this resolution. I hope you had an opportunity to read it carefully. Any questions, comments, more that anyone would like to say about the Faculty Senate resolution on academic advising restructuring? Patrick.
Yes, it's just really more of an addition since we've just very recently, as you mentioned previously in the agenda regarding post-tenure review, just learned that the BOR is adding the student success activities to annual tenure and post-tenure review processes. I think that actually enhances or brings more to the foreground the importance of discussing the role of advising, mentoring, what the difference might be in faculty and staff, both in the academic departments and in the advising center working together for student success. So I think that simply just underscores why the Senate feels so strongly that this is something that faculty and academic programs and Faculty Senate and its committees should be involved in that process. Just to say, since that is a newly added measure in PTR, annual review, etc. It's even more important that we all have a voice in this.
Yes, thank you. Farouk.
I want to make a brief comment. Advising is not just talking about which courses to take. In my discipline, probably in many other disciplines, it's also an opportunity for a faculty member to talk about careers. In some instances, to carefully weigh prerequisites and time for graduation while a student is selecting courses. And oftentimes, again, in chemistry, there is a long tradition that a single advisor might advise a student for several years, so that when it comes time for writing a letter of recommendation, there is a long association between a faculty member and a student. Also, let's call it outsourcing of advising to professional advisors has sometimes resulted, I'm not being statistical, but has sometimes resulted in students being misadvised, because in many disciplines where there are layers upon layers of prerequisites, one has to be really careful. So I am somewhat concerned about, or very concerned about, the proposal from Academic Affairs. And I think that it would be a good idea for several Senate subcommittees to have nuanced conversations in addition to the resolution that has been proposed. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Preston.
Thank you. I'd like to clarify the intent and the action that was taken. If you'll scroll up somewhat, the language in here might be setting tone for this conversation. Removing all faculty advising was not done. In our conversation in faculty Senate XCOM last week, tried to clarify that as presented to me, there were about 900 students in very specific academic programs who did not have the opportunity to receive general advising as part of the Center for Academic Success and Advising. And so the action taken was to add 3 advisors to that center so that students could have more access to advising. But I value greatly the disciplinary advising that faculty give, and that has not been removed. In fact, this should liberate faculty to focus more on that disciplinary advising and guide and offer letters of support and recommendation and very discipline-specific advising. This augments and adds to the resources available to students.
I guess if I could follow up with that. So my understanding is that there will be no undergraduate student on this campus that is advised solely by an academic, solely by a faculty member in their discipline, as was the case before this month. Can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that information comes from Carrie Ziegler. I think it's correct. What I think there is, what you're talking about, is the opportunity for what's called faculty mentoring. So no longer will faculty review a student's schedule in WolfWatch and remove the WolfWatch advising hold and that sort of thing. But now they will perhaps play a role coming alongside the professional advisors in the advising center and offer some of that mentoring, career advising, general discussions about the academic program, ongoing academic professional relationships that would lead toward the recommendation letters that Dr. Khan was mentioning. Is that correct? Am I misunderstanding something there?
Yeah, I think as you worded it, Dr. Williams, the emphasis would be, I think that de-emphasizes the importance of faculty. And so I would disagree with that assessment. I think faculty are front and center and central to mentorship and advising students. This adds to the resources for student success and advising. It does not remove faculty from that process. It actually adds resources. But your first part of that statement that no student will be advised exclusively by faculty, that is correct. Because now we have additional resources to come alongside faculty in advising students.
Patrick.
May I follow up, Provost Preston?
Sorry, I was going to, I think Patrick was ahead of you in the queue, and then I'll
Yeah,
go
I'm
to
sorry.
you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So Patrick, and then right after that, Farouk. Patrick.
Yeah, Farouk, if you were directly responding to that, please go ahead.
Thank you, Patrick. My question for the Provost is it possible to have nuance in terms of discipline-specific advising, and then freshmen and sophomores perhaps being advised by a professional advisor, but leaving advising in disciplines, especially where there are lots of prerequisites at the program level?
That was absolutely the intent. And I don't believe we've removed that. As we know, students change majors frequently. And so in particular, in their first and second year, adding this resource and adding additional advisors to get those the help that students need is absolutely essential. But I view advising as almost a crossfade, right? Early in their careers here at UWG, they might participate more with the central advising model. And then over time, more of that advising goes towards the disciplinary faculty. That was my experience as an undergraduate, and that's certainly what I've seen done successfully in a number of places. And I think it's working well at UWG. This was an addition of 3 advisors was the action that was taken.
Thank you. I also have a suggestion. I mean, we have a very large number of incoming freshmen, fairly large number of sophomores, so it would be difficult to categorize the advising, but it would be nice if one were to collect data, have student surveys and so forth, so that if there are areas that actually need improvement, they can be improved based upon collected data.
Yeah, I very much agree.
Thank you.
Patrick.
Yeah, I wanted to also explain, number one, I think the resolution definitely did not, coming from the executive committee, argue with the addition of further resources. However, when this issue first came up, I very quickly went to the University of West Georgia website to simply enter, let's say, from the student perspective advising, where do I go if I want to be advised? Of course, it takes you to the advising center. Then you click on who is my advisor? And until very recently, earlier this semester, for example, in my own discipline, English, it would say above 60 hours in the major, advising happens in the program by program faculty, okay? So if you now, and everybody can do that at home, steer in the same direction, that reference has been completely removed. So if I'm the student looking for my advisor and then I go to English, I will only see the reference to the professional advisor in the advising center. So just given that change that was already made to the website, I would take issue with the characterization that faculty are still front and center in academic advising, because in this sort of public facing representation that students see, that element has certainly been removed. Also, just want to offer anecdotally, in our program English, when we were still a department, we actually tried out removing all of our advising for all majors to the advising center, and it actually did not go well. So we voted as a faculty to take the 60+ major advising back into our program. So I think that is a relevant experience here to say it created a lot of confusion among students and actually hurt our enrollment, retention, and graduation.
Yeah, Dr. Rabin, I appreciate you sharing that. If there's a change to the website that needs to be made to clarify that, I'm very happy to work with the Center for Academic Success and Advising to make that happen.
Jennifer.
Thanks. So this came through my committee, and in my role as chair of the Academic Policies Committee, I reached out to a number of people, and what they're saying is very different from what you're saying, Dr. Preston. So I just want to clarify. What you're saying is that we do want students to start with primary role advisors so that when they come in for orientation, of course, they can meet with somebody, get a schedule, all of that, but up to a certain threshold that they would remain with that person and then transition to faculty advising. Or because what I was told point blank was that faculty would do absolutely no advising. And this was from someone who should have known the answer to that. So there's some confusion around that, and I just want to clarify.
Yeah, I'm very happy to get together and have a conversation around this, either virtually or face to face, and clarify the confusion. What was presented to me was we had about 900 students who, according to the ratios that NACADA recommends, we needed to add 3 advisors to central advising and then provide that additional support. How we implement that, I think very happy to have that conversation. But one of the other concerns that I had was faculty workload, and in particular faculty workload in the summer, that if we don't have general advisors supporting all of our majors across UWG, there exists the possibility that faculty are doing research off campus, they're doing scholarship, they're not teaching. And I deeply respect summer and faculty's time during summer if they're not on contract. And so there exists a possibility that if I were your student and you were off doing great things outside of the campus, then I'm left in a potential, either we're asking faculty to do work during a time when they're focused on other things, or we're putting students in limbo. So that was the genesis of this addition of these 3 faculty. If we need to talk through how we crossfade and who does what, this many hours, that many hours, it's all about student success and making sure that we're respecting faculty and faculty workload, in particular in summer, and making sure we have the appropriate number of advisors to support the number of students that we have. Again, I'm very happy to continue this conversation and work out some of the details.
I think that would be really appreciated. Oh, sorry, Dan. I was just going to say, yeah, we appreciate the focus on faculty workload and the respect you have for when they're off contract and that. I think that there does need to be some clarification put out. So I would invite you to join us at our next Academic Policies Committee meeting to kind of iron that out. But in the immediate time, advising is going to start very soon for spring. And so we need some clear guidance on what are the expectations for faculty? Should they be reaching out to their previous advisees now? What are the mechanics of this now so no students fall through the cracks?
Yeah, Dr. Preston, I really appreciate your willingness to meet with us and appreciate Dr. Edelman's invitation for you to join the APC meeting and discuss that. I guess to provide a little bit of clarification here and try to make sure that we understand what the issues are. I don't think anyone on the executive committee had any objection at all to hiring 3 new academic advisors, professional advisors. I think we didn't comment on that, but I think that would probably receive strong support. The issue was more of the process by which the second part of the decision that you mentioned was made, which is to move advising from at least a certain part of the role of academic advising from faculty to the advising center. And I guess the question would be, would it be, in my view, it would have been useful perhaps to have involved faculty in that conversation, because I think some programs might have said, wonderful, this could be a great resource for us. Others might have said this is actually not going to reduce our workload very much, and it might create other complications for our role in educating students. But I don't think faculty were given the chance to have those conversations. If you're open to those conversations now, I think that would be excellent. We would love to have those conversations. Any Any other comments, questions, anything that people want to discuss regarding this resolution before we move to a vote? I appreciate everything that people said on this and Dr. Preston's willingness to talk about this and present some additional information. But seeing no further hands raised or comments, I think we're ready to call for a vote. So Colleen, you're welcome to launch the poll if you'd like. Okay, it looks like it passes. There are 6 no votes and 5 abstentions, but 31 votes in support. So the resolution carries. Thank you. And I hope this won't be the end of the conversation, but that it will be an opportunity for further conversation on this with the provost as he so generously offered, and maybe starting with the APC. So thank you for suggesting that, Jennifer. Last action item on the agenda. 2 resolutions on COVID protocols, which we'll take up as 2 separate questions. One of those, the first of those, is a petition to the USG for a change in COVID policy. Of course, all of these, both of these resolutions were written before President Biden's executive orders yesterday. We still don't know how the USG is going to respond to those, but the context for this is that across the University System of Georgia, faculty at a number of institutions have been concerned about what they view as inadequate safety measures on campus to try to reduce the spread of COVID, especially among students, but really among any members of the university community, including faculty. And we're still operating with the recommendation, the encouragement that the USG introduced in late July to wear masks and for students to get, and for everyone to get vaccinated, but no mandate. And so a number of faculty senates across the state so far, including University of North Georgia, University of Georgia, and Georgia Tech, but it's a number that I think is rapidly growing. So this may already be out of date in terms of just listing the number that have passed resolutions similar to ours, have asked the USG to implement a mask mandate in indoor areas and a vaccine mandate, or if they don't do that, which would be the preferable policy, but to at least allow a local institution to do that, which so far they have not. When I submitted when I sent out a poll for faculty comment on potential resolutions that we could offer, the overwhelming idea that many of you mentioned, which was not actually on the poll list, was a write-in vote, was mask mandate or vaccine mandate. I think I received about 283 responses to the poll. 75% wanted the Senate to do something, and 80 people in particular wrote in the open write-in comment section, mask mandate or vaccine mandate or both. And so there's I think a lot of interest in this. This resolution, both the first and the second parts, reflect, I think, the general sense of what we could gain of the will of faculty from this poll. Any comments, any discussion, any questions, anything that people want to ask about the USG resolution or the resolution on campus COVID-related protocols at UWG? The USG resolution is pretty short and specific and corresponds to some other, closely corresponds to some other resolutions from other USG institutions. Our resolution on campus COVID-related protocols at UWG is more unique, I guess. It reflects mostly some of the ideas that were suggested in the survey, and tried to compile those in a way that would be practical and for the most part within the limits of current USG policies and things we thought could be implemented regardless of what the USG decides to do. Any questions, comments, discussion? Anything anyone wants to say? Seeing none, I think, oh yes, Rob.
Thank you, Dan. I won't take up much time, but I just wanted to speak for a moment on behalf of the AAUP. I'm Vice President of the AAUP, and the Executive Committee has worked with the statewide AAUP to organize a series of protests next week. So I just wanted to announce this as an information item related to this item, and we're calling for the USG, the BOR, to retract its ban on indoor mask mandates on USG campuses. We're coordinating again across the state. It's going to take place every day at different times. You will have received a flyer probably from a colleague by this point. But the idea is to encourage widespread participation for anyone who wants to participate without in any way disrupting classes. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that information item. Excellent. Anything else? If not, I think we are ready to launch the two votes. So we'll start with the USG resolution, and then we'll move right after that into the UWG resolution. It passes 40-4. Thank you. And now for the next resolution vote.
Dan, did you want to talk about this resolution a little bit? Because you mostly.
Sure. I guess I can say a few words regarding this. So all of these suggestions, I think, without exception, come primarily from ideas that were suggested in the survey of faculty across campus that I conducted during the last week of August, I think. And then I sent the information to the executive committee. I tried to compile it in detail. And then from there, we worked to fine tune the language a bit to compile this into something that would be cohesive. And what we really tried to do was to make sure that these are things that could be implemented even if the USG chose not to act in the way that we would prefer. And so it includes sensitivity to faculty and staff schedules when caring for children, for instance, who might be in quarantine or might face COVID themselves, especially with no vaccine yet being approved for children under 12. It covers class modality. It covers the need for resources. It covers the need for information, and encourages the administration to provide masks, disposable masks for students or anyone entering a university building, and encourages the administration to promote mask wearing, both in terms of modeling it and sending out messages on it. A number of ways in which we could work within the constraints of an area that has fairly low vaccination rates, very high COVID infection rates right now, work within the constraints of our particular geographic space and the constraints of the USG. I really appreciate all the ideas that faculty suggested in the survey. I thought many of them were very useful suggestions, thoughtful, and this resolution tries to capture as much of that as possible. I don't see any raised hands, so I think we are probably ready to launch the vote. Okay, 43-3 with 2 abstentions. The resolution passes. Thank you. Now, that concludes the action items that we need to vote on, but we have an announcement now from Rod McRae. Rod, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. I know that I am the person stopping you all from getting to your weekends and moving on to the next thing. So I will try to be as brief as possible while covering some information that you might all need to know. So I'm going to share my screen. I have a 47 slide. No, I don't. I have 4, but I'm going to just share with you briefly. And then, of course, as you, if you have questions as we go here, then feel free to let me know. So this brief intro. So Kaltura is the platform that's integrated into CourseDen that does screen capturing, and you can do quizzing with it, and you can, it's directly loaded into your videos that you make. You can edit them, load them into CourseDen, they're available to watch for students. Except for that's not what Kaltura has been doing for about the past 18 months. And so what we found is that, for example, embedded quizzing, so that students take a quiz, they watch a bit of video, take a quiz before they can proceed, the embedded quizzing hasn't been happening. And a few other features, including instances of where some faculty have had to wait for uploads for hours, if not days at a time, which simply isn't good enough. The center pays for this service as kind of a convenience item for faculty to be able to support their learning, but this thing is not doing what it says that it's supposed to do. So we have been looking for the past several months at an alternative to Kaltura, and this is a possible replacement. So I do want to stress this for those of you who have a lot of recordings on Kaltura. I'm going to touch on that in a second, but I do want to stress the fact that this is a consideration that we have at this stage. Certainly not something we don't want, that we want to rush through. It's something we want to take good care so that we know that we're supporting everybody as we go through this. So what's the problem we're trying to solve? So as I mentioned, long-running issues, especially since COVID, but even prior to that, they had issues with support and service. They boasted to us on a phone call that we have a 10-day turnaround on responding to requests for help. And faculty in the room who were on that call and the CTL team were like, 10 days? Do you know how long 10 days is across a semester? Not good enough. And so we let them know about that. They were a little surprised that 10 days was too long, genuinely surprised. It's also a very expensive program for what it does. And so again, we want to make sure that if we're going to use something, let's have something that actually serves our purposes. So some of the issues that we've seen have been those extreme upload times. Sometimes the in-video quizzing is not working at all. If it does, it's malfunctioning. We've also had inaccurate or limited analytics. So we've had many faculty ask, well, when do my students stop watching a video generally? Or how many times are they rewatching? Or where are the hotspots that they like to replay? None of that sort of analytical data are available through Kaltura as it stands. And also the video editing suite in Kaltura is kind of limited. So we wanted to look at alternatives to that sort of platform, a video editing and storage platform that would give faculty the most options they could for the cost. So it's a sort of balance of those two things, but ultimately are reliable. What we heard from faculty, we surveyed a bunch of faculty, especially the higher users of Kaltura over the past 18 months. And we found that some of them had just said, I've stopped using it. I've switched to, I pay for my own Screencast-O-Matic, I pay for my own Camtasia, or I do something else because Kaltura is just notoriously unreliable and I've wasted too much time. And some of you on this call may have had that experience as well. So what we want to do is find something that would work better. And for example, what we know with the increasing attention to accessibility for transcription services, Kaltura was okay with transcriptions, probably maybe a 70%-ish reliability. We wanted something in the 90s, preferably. We also wanted something that could be indexed to videos, that was searchable by content in the language, that you could edit after the fact, and that you could click on a word and it would take you to that point in the video for the students especially. So here's just a very brief overview. I'm not going to read all this, but I'm just giving you a snapshot of what we did. We looked at 9 initial vendors who are competitors to Kaltura. Then we narrowed that down to 4, which is those are the folks on the left-hand side of that black line. And then we narrowed those down to 2 for vendors demonstrations on campus, online, for a small group of us on campus, and we got down to Echo 360 and UJA. So we asked those folks who attended what they thought, and there was a leaning generally about trying out a pilot with UJA. And so we're a 30-day pilot. But what I want to stress is this. There will be no impact to your YouTube videos, of course, because that's through Google. There won't be anything touching Collaborate Ultra, although Collaborate Ultra will be sunsetting at the end of March 2022. We'll have a separate communication about that later on. It doesn't affect your Teams or Zoom recordings either. It won't affect anything on your computer that you've downloaded. It's just related to what's available in Kaltura. We have roughly about 12,000 recordings in Kaltura that were made since we started using it in 2017. A majority of those, of course, were over the past 18 months. So what we want to do is prepare you for the fact that if we don't make a change, that we'll continue using Kaltura at its expense, roughly about $41,000. Yeah, that's feeling in your stomach. I could do a lot with $41,000, and that doesn't include paying for a service that doesn't work. So what we would do is find an alternative. If the UJA pilot is not successful, we'll look at Echo 360, and if not, then we'll continue with Kaltura, possibly, or discontinue, but with the acceptance that Kaltura will be continually unreliable with some of its features. So if the pilot is successful, and if we, let's see, why is this not moving on? There we go. So if we decide that the best decision after that pilot is to change, we'll need to do so pretty swiftly because our contract with Kaltura ends at the end of the calendar year, December 31st. So we would need to do the transition in November, December. But here's the good news. So for those of you who have lots of recordings and freaking out, you're saying, hang on, do I need to download all of those recordings and then upload them to the new vendor? Nope. All of that's going to be taken care of. We'll do that in November, December, roughly, whenever the paperwork goes through. If we decide that that's the best decision. The only thing, that trade-off for you though, is that you don't have to do the individual downloading of all those 12,000 videos, but you will have to relink your content in CourseDen. So if you've got recordings that you use often, you'll need to go back into those courses when you copy them over from semester to semester and make sure that the new link is available to wherever it's hosted with UJA potentially 360. But also we'll have plenty of support in the process. So this will begin, if we do make the switch, it'll begin spring 2022, which does seem quick, but this is the boat that we're in. And that support will come through the vendor. We'll have CTL training workshops for pedagogy and best use, and there'll also be knowledge-based articles through UWG Online. So the big takeaway from this for us is that you know about this, so that you can ask any questions of the CTL team. But ongoing though, regardless of the vendor or regardless of the platform that you use, make sure that you're saving your crucial recordings, because we learned with Kaltura, just because you record it in there doesn't mean it's going to be there when you need it. There were some cases of where just something got spoiled and it was no longer there for whatever reason that Kaltura would not take responsibility for. So if it's that important, if you can't replace it, if you don't want to have to re-record it, make sure you're saving it in at least 1 or 2 other places. Put it on YouTube, put it on a flash drive, put it on your desktop, do something other than just trusting any source. And that's true for every document, of course, but especially for your learning materials. So I won't take up your time here to open up for questions, but my email address is about to be, I'm going to find where, my email address is rmccrae@westgar.edu or ctl@westgar.edu. And if you have any questions about this transfer, let me know. I want to make sure we're being really transparent in this process, because this could touch your everyday world when you're using videos for your courses. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rod. Any questions for Rod? See none, thanks. Appreciate that. Any other announcements? Anything else that people want to share before we close today? If not, thank you for your participation in the September Senate meeting. Look forward to seeing you in October, and that adjourns our session. Thank you. Have a great weekend.